I really hope you're enjoying these videos. Chapter 29 of Jeremiah is going to go in a little different direction than what we've done in the last two chapters. So remember, chapter 27, 28 was all about this discussion around the prophesying of Jeremiah to tell the people, you need to just surrender and go to Babylon, versus try to fight them and end up being destroyed. And then that debate between Jeremiah and Hananiah, the two prophets, to see who is a true prophet or not. So chapter 29 is more of a letter, basically, that Jeremiah is writing. So if we look at verse 1, it says, "Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captives, and to the priests and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadrezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon." So this is the 597 BC exile. Jeremiah is writing a letter to teach the word of God to those people, basically. So let's talk about this setting in here. The setting of the correspondence is in the days following the downfall of Judah in 597 BC. There is no precise date. Even verse 2 is very indefinite and seems to be an insertion based on 2 Kings 24. But the situation is parallel to that described in chapters 27 and 28. There was a period of unrest all over the Babylonian Empire, and prophets both in Jerusalem and in Babylon were proclaiming the imminent ending of the exile, evidently believing that Babylon was on the point of collapse. The Babylonian Chronicle hints at internal troubles in Babylon in 595 and 594 BC, in which some of the deported Jews seem to have been involved. At least 2 were executed by Nebuchadrezzar. The fact that Jeremiah's letter was sent by official envoys from Zedekiah to Nebuchadnezzar fits well with the date of 594 BC, when Zedekiah may have been obliged to report on recent events in Judah and to reaffirm his loyalty. So, revolts in Babylon. Babylon's got other groups they're having a hard time with. The Jews see an opportunity to revolt there as well. Everybody down here is getting ready to revolt. Everybody is believing that the trend is Babylon's going to collapse and fall, except for Jeremiah. Jeremiah is saying, nope, it's going to grow and thrive. You need to be subject to them. So the world, the people believe commonly, maybe Babylon's on its way out already and we're going to be free and fine and amazing. And Jeremiah says, no, that's not what's going to happen. So now this is a letter that is being sent, to the Jews in Babylon after that first exile. That's what's going on in here, basically. So now, as in Jerusalem, so too in Babylon, the predictions of false prophets fostered a lively hope that the domination of Nebuchadnezzar would not last long and that the return of the exiles to their fatherland would soon come about. So they're like, oh, we've only been here for 3 years. It's time to go back. It's time to go home. So they see this as an opportunity to think up this narrative that they're going to go home. So the spirit of discontent, thus excited, must have exercised an injurious influence on the fortunes of the captives, and could not fail to frustrate the aim which the chastisement inflicted by God was designed to work out, namely, the moral advancement of the people. Therefore, Jeremiah makes use of an opportunity furnished by an embassy sent by King Zedekiah to Babel, to address a letter to the exiles, exhorting them to yield with submission to the lot God had assigned to them. He counsels them to prepare by establishing their households there for a long sojourn in Babel, and to seek the welfare that the country as the necessary condition of their own. They must not let themselves be deceived by the false prophets, idle promises of a speedy return, since God will not bring them back and fulfill his glorious promises till after 70 years have passed. That's Kyle and Delich in their commentary on the Old Testament made that comment. So Jeremiah's stories we're going to see in here is, wait it out. You're going to be there a long time. Build a house, settle down, and not revolt, basically. Now, let's go into here. Verse 2, after Jeconiah, the king and the queen, and the eunuchs and the princes of Judah, and the Jerusalem, and the carpenters and the smiths were departed from Jerusalem. So that's the ones that were exiled, basically. They were taken. So this, verse 2 is interesting because it's in the parentheses there, basically. This could be but this is probably an editorial that was added later. by a scribe, basically. Because if you look at this is the palace officials. A lot of palace officials here, basically. Probably not actually the real, when it says and the eunuchs, they're probably talking about more palace officials, more servants in there, not the official eunuchs that were there. So eunuchs kind of got generalized after a while. A lot of times there were most of the rulers, most of the palace officials were men. One of the things that a king usually had, on top of having a queen, was having mistresses. He would have a harem of women that would be his other wives, his concubines, basically. And the problem is there's a man that's overseeing them, taking care of them. If that man, and I'm sure it happened on numerous occasions, that man would fall in love with one of them, and they would end up getting that man would get one of the king's wives pregnant, which means a whole big mess, because now, oh, she's pregnant. Is it the king's son? Is it the servant's son? What's going on with this? What's happening? And if it's a servant's son, oh, that's bad. We got to kill him, get rid of him. So to prevent this mess, they would basically castrate the men who were supposed to be watching the women. So even if they had intercourse, there's no pregnancies, basically. They couldn't have kids. So that's sometimes what they would get this general term of eunuchs from, basically, these servants in the king's house. Verse 3, by the hand of Elash, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah, king of Judah, sent unto Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, saying, so these are part of the people that are going to deliver this message, basically. Now these people, this isn't just anybody delivering it. Zedekiah is having this message sent. This is an official message that's being sent. So it's going by diplomatic mail, basically. This isn't just a casual letter to the people. This is official. The envoys were Elasah ben Shaphan, who may have been the brother of Ahikam ben Shaphan. Remember, Ahikam's the one that helped Jeremiah be saved from the people in chapter 26. And Gemariah ben Hilkiah. Both were from priestly families and played an important part in Josiah's reform. They were friendly toward Jeremiah and may even had sympathy with his preaching. Perhaps, too, Gemariah ben Hilkiah was a son of the famous high priest of Josiah's day. So during Josiah's day, there was a famous high priest who found, in cleaning up the temple, they found the scriptures and read it to Josiah, which convinced Josiah to do the reforms and everything else. So Gemariah could be that famous priest's son. We don't know for sure, but we think that could be there. Their mission to Nebuchadrezzar may have been more delicate than simply to carry the annual tribute. They may have been sent to assure Nebuchadrezzar of Zedekiah's loyalty after the abortive attempt to plan a revolt among the small states to the west. We saw that in chapter 27. Otherwise, the men were conducting routine business between the vassal and his overlord. It is evident that there was a good deal of communication between comparatively distant places in these years. But diplomatic correspondence between overlords and vassals was common in the second millennium BC, as the Amarna letters written from Palestine to the Pharaoh indicate. That was Thompson, his book of Jeremiah, talked about that. So these are the two guys that are the officials that are officially sent out from Zedekiah to go to Babylon to talk to Nebuchadnezzar, but also while they're there, deliver this message to the Jews. Now, verse 4, he says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, this is the message, basically. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. Build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. The wives, take ye wives, beget sons and daughters, take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminish. So Jeremiah's advice is to settle in, build a life in Babylon, because you're going to be there a long time. They were hoping to come home in just a couple of years. They'd only been there about 3 or 4 years by this time, basically. The false prophets have been telling them, you're coming home soon, basically. So it's interesting to realize that these people were not prisoners, but more of a forced relocation. So these were the group, they got moved out, but they were told, live in Babylon, have a house, have a job, live your life. We're just relocating you, basically. It was the second exile, the big one, that a lot of those people got put in prison, basically, for their revolt against Babylon. So this first group, if you're going to be exiled to Babylon, the first group was the best group to be exiled with. They weren't treated as prisoners, basically, just forced relocations. So they were free. They could plant their gardens, they could eat their fruit, they could have families, they could do things. So in verse 7, he continues and says, "And seek the peace of the city, whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace." So basically, go and live. This is going to be a change, but it's going to be a trial. It's going to be a big deal, a very different thing for your life. But learn to live, find the peace inside the trial. That's the story here. That's the message. Find the peace inside the trial. When you find that peace inside the trial, that's going to help you to go through this better. So learn to live with your new neighbors and community, follow the laws of the land, be contributors to the kingdom of Babylon's economy. Learn to live your way among them. That's what it came down to. Find the peace among the trial. And that'll help you a lot as you go through this, because it's a necessary trial for you to go through. Verse 8, "For thus saith the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken to your dreams, which ye cause to be dreamed." So stop listening to the fake prophets and those who try to seek divine wisdom without praying sincerely to God. For their words to be true, they must revolt against Babylon and to try to get back to Jerusalem. So that's the problem with these diviners, with these false prophets, is they have to revolt and go back to Jerusalem to be true. That's not the case with what Jeremiah is telling them, basically. So as a reminder, verse 9, "For they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith the Lord." So again, the Lord is saying, I'm disavowing those false prophets. They're not my prophets. Jeremiah is the prophet, not them. Stop listening to them. Verse 10, "For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you, and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place." So he lays it out there right there, 70 years. God put a stake in the ground on that one. It's going to take 70 years before you return. That's a generation, a whole generation, basically. If somebody was born to a member of the tribe of Judah at this time, they will be about 70 years old or practically dead by the time they get out of this exile. So the people that are going in are not the ones that are going to be coming out. Basically, it's going to a whole new generation change. So when you look at verse 10, God does not want the people to stay and then he will help them return. He does want the people to stay and then he'll help them return. Could it be similar to the 40 years of wandering in the desert? It is a whole generation is going to live in Babylon, and then it'll be that next generation after them that goes back. So could we see this as that same as the 40-day wandering in the desert around Moses, where we need to get the current generation out of the way and bring a new generation in that can believe new things and come work, basically. Does he want to have the current generation to be gone so he can work with the future generations and have different perspectives? That could be what's happening. That could be why this is happening to him. The current people in Jerusalem aren't repenting and are not going to repent. But we're going to move them out. We're going to change things up, and we're going to give them a new perspective, and that we're going to wait until we have the generation that has never known the old perspective. All they know is the new perspective. Then we're going to bring them back and work with them. That could very well be why this is, what's going on with this. Eventually, so it is interesting that God does want to help his people, but they are in a bad predicament since the people have been going against God for generations. So God is preserving the people and helping them by getting them out of their current state. It will cause them to have to change their ideas and even religion. But it will eventually be a good thing for them. This is a group that will not have to endure the major destruction of Jerusalem that is coming. Again, these are the people that are already in exile. They're not dealing with, they're going to hear about the destruction, but they don't have to live with the destruction that's coming. So sometimes God causes us to make major life changes or gives us big challenges to change us and eventually help us to be better. So that's a good message that we can get from this story of Jeremiah, is that sometimes, again, God makes us go through a trial, not because we're being punished, but because we need to change. We need to see things different. And that's this, going through this challenge is going to help us to see things different, basically. In fact, verse 11 is going to be an interesting one. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. He wants to help the people out. Thoughts of peace. I want to give you an expected end. I want you to know when this is going to end. Give you a date to look forward to, something to give you more hope. So he's doing that. Verse 12, then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. This is important. When the people sincerely seek him, he will be there to help them. And he's hoping that they pray to him more because of this change of venue, because of this. Again, this is why. I need you to get out of your stuck state. I need you to get into a new place so that you have a greater chance of following my commandments. Stop following the idols. Follow me. Worship me. Call upon me. Verse 13, and ye shall seek me and find me, and when ye shall search for me with all your heart. So when you really want to find God and you're willing to put a lot of effort into it, he's going to be there. Verse 14, and I will be found of you, saith the Lord. And I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations, and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord, and I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. This is the gathering of Israel back. Now we could see this in a specific sense of at the end of the exile, the return of the people, but we can see this from all the nations, from everywhere, eventually coming back is more of the latter-day gathering of Israel, basically. So that's our future. Well, technically, it's happening now, but it's going to be at a greater scale in our future, basically. That's happening in real time. Verse 15, because ye have said, the Lord hath raised us up prophets in Babylon. So this is now, God is now turning to those who are still at Jerusalem in this idea, basically. So verse 16, know that thus saith the Lord, of the king that sitteth upon the throne of David, and of all the people that dwelleth in this city, and all of your brethren that are not gone forth with you into captivity, thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will send upon them the sword, the famine, the pestilence, and will make them like vile figs that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. Remember we have the story of the two baskets of figs. He's referring to that in verse 17, basically. So there is a judgment that must be fulfilled before they can talk of restoration. That's what's going to happen here. So he's telling them, guys, you got the better end of the deal in the exile, basically. Verse 18, and I will persecute them with the sword and with the famine and with the pestilence, and will deliver them to be removed to all the kingdoms of the earth, to be a curse and an astonishment and an hissing and a reproach among all the nations whither I have driven them. It's not going to be good. It's going to be really bad, basically. So verse 19, because they have not hearkened to my words, saith the Lord, which I sent unto them by my servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them. But ye would not hear, saith the Lord. I sent prophets, but you're not paying attention. Verse 20, hear ye therefore the word of the Lord, all ye of the captivity, whom I have sent from Jerusalem to Babylon. So this is an admonition to the exile, saying, I really want you to do this. Pay attention here, basically. Verse 21, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, of Ahab the son of Koliah, and of Zedekiah the son of Messiah, which prophesy a lie unto you in my name, behold, I will deliver them into the hand of Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall slay them before your eyes. So these are false prophets that are, God's calling them out, basically, and they're going to die. Verse 22, and of them shall be taken up a curse by all the captivity of Judah which are in Babylon, saying, the Lord make thee like Zedekiah and like Ahab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire. That's going to be good. So now this method of death was used in Babylon for a long time. According to the Hammurabi code, they would stick him in a fire. And we're going to see this with Daniel. They put Daniel and his 3 friends in a fire, basically, as well. But what's interesting is if you think about this, the Lord is saying, not only am I going to kill Zedekiah and Ahab, these false prophets, but it's going to be remembered by the people. How they died is going to be kind of a curse. So Zedekiah and Ahab's death, to put this in modern terms, Zedekiah and Ahab's death are going to become a meme among the exiles to talk about a bad, cursed death, something you don't want to experience, basically. That's what's going to happen. That's what verse 22 is basically saying. Now, verse 23, because they have committed villainy in Israel, and have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, and have spoke lying words in my name, which I have not commanded them, even I know, and am a witness, saith the Lord. So God is now laying out the sins of these false prophets. Now, these false prophets might still be alive at this point. They haven't been killed yet. Their sins are being pointed out, basically. Here's what they're guilty of, basically. Now, verse 24, thus shalt thou also speak to Shemaiah the Nehelamite, saying, so let's look at this guy for a second here. Now, so just realize, okay, verse 24 kind of goes in a different direction. There's a good chance that from verse 24 on is a different letter of Jeremiah. And so these were 2 different letters that were combined into one chapter, basically. So that is a possibility here with this. Now, Jeremiah's letter evoked some repercussions. A certain Shemaiah, the Nehelamite, another false prophet, wrote a complaint to the temple overseer. Details of Jeremiah's reply are not given, but only his own summary of Shemaiah's letter of complaint. So this is Jeremiah telling us about Shemaiah's letter of complaint against him. So he says here, Shemaiah is otherwise unknown. His place of origin, Nalam, is also unknown. One proposal is the Nehelamite is derived from the word Nalam, to dream, and that the term defines the man as a dreamer. Jeremiah charges this man with sending a letter in his own name to Zephaniah ben Messiah, the priest, who also was the overseer in the temple in Jerusalem. It is not clear why it was an offense to write in his own name unless Jeremiah was expressing the view that the letter did not have Yahweh's authority because he did not write in the name of Yahweh. The charges repeated in verse 31 followed in verse 32 by the syntactical conclusion that he here is left unstated. So that was Thompson that made that comment. So this is now Jeremiah talking about something that happened, basically. So that's what we're getting into now. So verse 25, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saying, because thou hast sent letters in thy name unto all the people that are at Jerusalem, and to Zephaniah the son of Messiah, the priest, and to all the priests, saying, the Lord hath made thee priest in the stead of Jehoiada the priest, that ye should be officers in the house of the Lord. For every man that is mad and maketh himself a prophet, that thou shouldest put him in prison and in the stocks. So this is the letter, this is the complaint, basically, that's happening. So now, this Zedekiah is he's the priest, basically, in the temple. Now, it was the job of the priest in the temple to determine which of the preachers was wrong and lock them up and get rid of them. But they didn't to Jeremiah. Remember, they exonerated him in chapter 26. So verse 27, so that's what they're saying. You didn't do this. So verse 27, now therefore, why hast thou not reproved Jeremiah of Anathoth, which maketh himself a prophet to you? This is the complaint that Shemaiah is making, saying he's prophesied in God's name. He wrote this letter to the people in God's name. He's not representing God, at least from his perspective, because he's one of the false prophets. He's saying, why are you not reproving this Jeremiah? Why aren't we getting rid of him? Because he's going against everything else that the rest of us are doing. Excuse me. Throat's dried up. So this is what he's saying here, verse 28, for therefore he sent unto us in Babylon, saying, so Shemaiah might be in Babylon, writing a letter back to the temple priests in Jerusalem, going, why aren't you guys censuring this Jeremiah guy? Why is he allowed to write all these prophecies against us? So he sent unto us in Babylon, saying, this captivity is long, build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. And Zephaniah the priest read this letter in the ears of Jeremiah the prophet. So now Zephaniah is going, hey, there's a complaint against you. Let me read this complaint. So the priests were not happy that Jeremiah, what he was doing. For some reason, Zephaniah did not discipline Jeremiah. So here's what's interesting is Zephaniah told Jeremiah what's about the complaint of what's happening, but didn't censure him. Is Zephaniah maybe sympathetic to Jeremiah's efforts or even Jeremiah's message? Maybe Zephaniah doesn't feel like he can speak out against it because he would be speaking out against his profession, against his wealth and his fame and his fortunes, against the norm of the culture. Because if he followed Jeremiah and stepped out and went with Jeremiah, he would suffer same persecutions as Jeremiah. Now verse 30, then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, send to all them of the captivity, saying, so this is a second letter to the captives, thus saith the Lord concerning Shemaiah the Nehelamite, because that Jeremiah hath prophesied unto you, and I sent him not, and he caused you to trust in a lie. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will punish Shemaiah the Nehelamite and his seed. He shall not have a man to dwell among his people, neither shall he be the good that I will do for my people, saith the Lord, because he hath taught rebellion against the Lord. So Shemaiah is telling the people, stop listening to Jeremiah. He's wrong. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to be freed here soon. The king's going to go back. The temple vessels go back. We're all going to go back. This is just a temporary thing. We're all going back. Don't listen to what Jeremiah is telling you. And so that's where he's coming from. And so now this letter goes in going, hey, God's telling me to tell you that this guy is basically not going to have a family anymore. If he has a family, they're all going to die. He's going to die, and he's going to have no continuation of his heritage. So teaching nationalism is going against what God wanted taught. That's part of the problem that's happening in this. So we got to be careful again who we're listening to. We may love the message that they're telling us. Nehemiah, even Jeremiah related to Nehemiah's message in the last chapter. But it wasn't what God said. Even though it was a great thing to say, and we hope it came true, it's not what the word of the Lord was. So we have to make sure that we're following the word of God. We're following him and doing what he wants us to do. That's where seeking the Spirit will help us to accomplish that more. So let's jump over to our next chapter as we continue to move forward in the book of Jeremiah.